That would be your NCPHC. His allergies got kicked up by his attempt to become a gentleman gardener.
Yeah, my daughter, every time she goes out, walks her dog, and comes back in, her allergies are terrible. And I'm like, oh my God. And she was briefly working at a Harris Teeter in Chattanooga, so she started calling concerned. Yeah, she's not working there anymore.
Hey, Jay, I'm good to go on my end.
All right, sounds good. Well, I am showing 10 a.m. If I could, I'm gonna do a you know, I'm sorry, I've got a mute for 1 second.
On my way.
Wallace, are you on the call? Wallace?
Yes, I am. I don't know. I was not prompted. That's why I was just trying to get on and talk to Antoine. I don't know whether I came in on the right line or something because I wasn't prompted for passcodes.
Oh, I apologize. I need a couple of minutes. I've become the apparently the default IP person in my text in my personal phone. So stand by for a minute. Okay, everybody, it's Jay. I'm going to try to do a roll call here. Get started. Ashley?
Yes, I'm here.
Access Keith? Keith?
I'm here.
Bill, I know I heard you. You still there?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Andy?
Present.
Andy?
Here.
Robert?
Here, I can barely hear you, Jay.
And Wallace.
I'm here.
I think you are now the yeah.
We're not on the 8x8. It's not coming in.
Jay, I'm watching Wallace here. Wallace looks like he has a bad connection, and also Andy.
Okay.
And also Andy's sitting on mute.
Andy,
Okay, I'm unmuted.
if you can hear us, please unmute.
I am unmuted.
I'm unmuted.
Yeah, I'm back on. I tried to connect through the computer.
Are we supposed to be calling in on a phone line, or are we supposed to be calling in using the
Okay.
8x8 app?
Andy, have you connected?
Yes.
I'm on 8x8, but it's
I'm
not
sending
showing.
call-in number, Jay.
What's that?
I'm sending call-in numbers for them instead of them on video.
Okay.
We're supposed to be on 8x8. I'm on and it's not showing anything.
Ashley, did you phone in or did you dial in through your computer?
I use the phone.
Please enter the meeting ID and press pound.
Yeah, I think we're going to find the commentary here. All right. Log in through the computer.
Well, right? Yeah. Okay, Dave, this is Andy. I called him on the phone.
Okay, thanks, Andy.
Hey, Andy, this is Antoine. You can end that video thing from the computer and just use your phone.
I didn't hear a word of that because I heard about 3 different reloads.
Hey, Andy, this is Antoine.
Yeah.
You can actually close out that web browser and you should be good to go from your phone.
You have specified an unknown conference number. Please enter the meeting ID and press pound.
Jay, I don't know if you confirmed Robert's on, but I saw him connected.
Please enter the meeting ID and press pound.
Robert, you on?
I'm on. I can barely hear you.
Please enter the meeting ID and press pound.
He's Robert Wallace.
Well, I'm here, but I'm trying to get the right number to get in. I've got an invalid meeting ID something.
Meeting ID and press pound.
All right, I'm gonna mute again and start texting and see if I can run down our votes.
You have specified an unknown conference number. Please enter the meeting ID and press pound. You have specified an unknown conference number. Please enter the meeting ID and press pound.
All right. I don't know if anybody can hear me, but I keep getting an unknown conference number.
Please enter the meeting ID and press pound.
Yeah, I can hear you, Robert. Okay. Yeah, Robert, my ID. is
Antoine, can you hear me?
not existent, so I just. Yeah. I think that's the problem we're having.
Please enter the meeting ID and press pound.
Well, if you've been able to do it. Well, if you've been able to do it.
Connecting you to your conference. Please wait.
I see Keith is on, but I'm not hearing anything. He was on just a second ago.
I'm here.
Okay, has anybody got me now?
Can you guys hear me? Anybody hear me?
I do, Vance. Keith, I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear.
Hello? Oh, okay. Well, I don't know. I guess we're supposed to call in on the phone line. I think we're talking to each other on this 8x8, maybe?
I'm off 8x8.
How are you?
I also texted, I was, and he, so.
Can you guys hear me now?
Please enter the meeting ID and press pound. Connecting you to your conference. Please wait.
Everyone there?
Okay, am I?
Wallace, we can hear you.
Okay. What do I do with this 8x8 thing that I dialed into?
Wallace, are you on both your phone and the browser?
Probably, yeah, how do you cut this browser? I mean, if I cut it completely, exit the browser?
Yeah, browser.
I'll take care of it, Jay.
Okay, I'm completely out of the browser.
Okay, that took care of the feedback.
Okay.
I think Keith is who we're still waiting on.
He was on the browser just a second ago because I was said to talk to him for a second.
Yeah.
Through the browser.
Can you hear me? Hey, Keith, we can. Are you on your phone and your browser? Yeah, I'm using the browser. Yeah. Right. I'm back to the phone. So, go ahead and close your browser and just stick with it. Okay, I'm out. Okay, perfect. So you can still hear us fine? Yes. Okay. Well, obviously, I think clearly the common theme in all this is that everyone who tried to use the browser link did not work. So we will do something different in June with that. So let me go ahead then and call the roll to establish a quorum. Pete? Yes. Okay. Ashley?
Here,
Bill? Andy? Here. Robert? 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 Yes. Okay. And Wallace, I just heard you. Okay. Clint, I know you're on. Joe, are you on? I am indeed. JP, are you on?
Jay, this is Rhonda. I'll follow up with him. He should be on. I did send him the call-in information.
Yeah, if you would please follow up on that.
Sure.
All right, well, we have, Keith, we certainly got a quorum. I would say we go ahead and get started, and you call the meeting and remind everyone of the ethics statement.
All right, good morning, everyone. Thanks for being patient as we work through our technology issues. But I would like to call this 970th meeting of the North Carolina Board of Pharmacy to order. And just remind everybody of the ethics statement. In accordance with the State Government Ethics Act, it is the duty of every board member to avoid both conflicts of interest and appearances of conflict. Are there any board members who have any known conflicts of interest or with respect to any matters coming before the board today? Also take that as a unanimous no. So moving on with the agenda, anybody have any comments on the consideration of the April 2020 meeting minutes?
Keith, if I could, a couple of things real quick. We want to do the public hearing first on the procedurals, but before we do that, I'm going to ask Clint to take just a minute or two here. The General Assembly made some changes to the Public Meetings Act to help accommodate these teleconference board meetings, and so Clint's just going to give a couple of things that we need to keep in mind today as we're moving through the meeting. Okay.
Yeah, earlier this month, the General Assembly adopted a big, massive omnibus like COVID bill that included among it debt to operate state local government during state emergency. As part of that, it expressly approved the remote meeting during clear state of emergency. I imagine some boards have statutes that say they shall meet such place that they need to take care of. It contains a number of requirements for those meetings, all of which we have complied with except one. And that is with respect to people identifying themselves when they speak. We take for granted that board staff and board members know each other. Board members, the people who are calling in may not know who's talking, and so this is designed to address that issue. Also, as we've witnessed today, with technology drop in and out, so it is important when we take a vote to know who is still on the phone and whether we still have a quorum and who is voting to play. So the bill requires board members to identify themselves 3 times, once when a roll is taken at the start of the meeting, which we just did. 2, anytime the board member speaks during deliberations, just say this is Keith and whatever. if you forget, and we know this, we'll point that out, and if we don't, then, anyone can ask who it was. And third, all those need to be taken, and roll call votes. You know, for a person, you see who's voting, who's up there. This allows us to tell whether there's quorum and voting. So that's what we will, need to do today, and either whoever is president in 5 minutes, can do that, or Jake can. One other important reminder from, reviewing the statute, which is, true whether we're in a remote meeting, in a live meeting, or not in a meeting at all, is the statute reminds us that any text, any IMs, any DMs, any snaps, any scribbled posted notes, anything the kids are doing to communicate these days, is a public record, and also if it's relating to board business, if it's taking place during deliberation, they side deliberation should not happen, and so don't do any of those things. So that's that.
This is Jay. Thanks, Clint. Board members, any questions for Clint? Hearing none, Mr. President, if you'd like, I'd be happy to introduce the public hearing.
That would be perfectly fine.
Very good. So members, members of the public who are logged on, the Board of Pharmacy has proposed a revision of its administrative hearing procedural rules. It involves an adoption of a new rule, number 2017, amendments to various other rules, 21 NCAC 46.2001, .2004 through .2009, amendment to .2011, amendments to .2013 through 2016, as well as repeal of 21 NCAC 46.2010. This large-scale revision has several goals. One is to make sure that the board's own hearing procedural rules comply with the letter of the North Carolina Administrative Procedures Act. Number two, that we remove any rules that simply restate substantive law, provisions of the Administrative Procedures Act, or other board rules. Three, this brings would bring our procedural rules into compliance with the board's practices developed over many years. Fourth, would provide clarity on procedural steps that weren't previously covered or were not covered adequately in the rules, which makes things more efficient and less costly for all parties. Five, notify parties of certain provisions that are currently covered in board orders so that parties can be aware of these provisions from the outside. And six, generally improve the hearing process. I want to point out that everybody apparently on the public line has their mic unmuted, and we can hear you having a side conversation with what may be a patient. I would like to once again ask that the participant on this call with the unmuted mic who's engaged in a side conversation to please use your mic. Antoine, do we have a way to mute that mic?
I'm looking for it right now. Right. Okay.
Yeah, I'm still here. Did that do it?
Yeah.
Okay. Those were the purposes of the the rule amendments, repeals, and additions. The rule has been noticed for public comment as required under the North Carolina Administrative Procedures Act. As of today, board staff have received no comments, pro or con, concerning these rule amendments. The board did notice a public hearing for today at 10 a.m. on these rule amendments. It was originally noticed for an in-person hearing at the Board of Pharmacy, but was properly renoticed as a teleconference only public hearing. So at this point then I will open to any member of the public who has a comment they would like to make on these proposed additions, repeals, and amendments to the Board of Pharmacy's procedural rules governing hearings. Antoine, is anybody from the public line indicating a need to speak?
No, sir. And there's also no comments on the YouTube as well.
Board members, this is Jay. Just so you know, the audio of our meeting is also being streamed through the board's YouTube channel, which includes a chat function. So Antoine is monitoring the public telephone line as well as the YouTube chat line. And we'll read off any questions that come through the chat line. Hearing no questions, and Antoine assuming that nothing has appeared on the chat, is that still correct?
That is correct.
All right, well, that being the case, then I will declare this public hearing on the adoption, amendment, and repeal of certain NCDOT hearing procedural rules to be closed. And again, the board received no comments concerning any of these rules. And Mr. President, we will come back, of course, to consider action on these proposed rules later on in the agenda.
This is Keith. Thank you, Jay.
Sure.
Moving along, now we'll consider the April 2020 meeting minutes. I hope each board member's had a chance to review those. And does anybody have any comments, or do anybody have any comments or questions on the minutes?
Yes, this is Bill Mixon, a pharmacist from the western part of the state. In the minutes, I believe there's a typo under temporary license reactivation. It slightly changes the sentence.
Okay. Bill, this is Jay. I'm scrolling down to find it.
First page of the report on any passport.
Okay, I've got it. Oh, I see. This is Jay. Bill, the word postly should be posting. Is that the one?
Sentence reads, as written, this vet's reported only been 2 temporary reactivations of recently inactivated pharmacy licenses.
Oh, I see. I'm sorry. So that should read, Mrs. Best reported that there have only been 2 temporary reactivations. We've noted that, Mr. Mixon, and we'll make that change, as well as a typo in the preceding paragraph that the word postly, which I don't think is actually a word, should be posted weekly updates. So we'll be happy to make those 2 edits to the minutes.
It's actually posting, Jay.
posting. Thanks, Clint.
All right, any other revisions or, comments on the minute?
Motion to approve.
Motion.
This is Sandy Bowman, motion to approve. 60 seconds.
Do I hear a second?
Keith, this is Jay. We have a motion from Dr. Bowman and a second from Mr. Mixon.
Okay, all in favor, we'll do a roll call.
I can do, you want me to do it, Keith, just so you don't have to keep going back and forth and trying to tally that? So roll call. The motion on the floor is to approve the minutes of the April meeting with the 2 typographical corrections as noted. Motion made by Dr. Bowman, seconded by Mr. Mixon. Discussion is concluded. Roll call vote. Keith.
Aye.
Ashley.
Aye.
Bill.
I'm in favor.
Andy.
Aye.
Robert.
Aye.
And Wallace. Wallace?
I got the, but having trouble. Anyway, never mind.
Easy for you to say, Wallace. Very good. Mr. President, the motion passes unanimously.
All right. Moving on to the next item, it is the time of year where we select new board officers. So, Mr. Campbell, do you want to lead that, or shall I?
Sure, certainly your pleasure. This is Jay. Just very quickly, the board will need to select a president and a vice president, of course, as you've done every year. And then once that is complete, the next item related would be the appointments of the committees and representatives to various bodies, which, Mr. President, your pleasure, I'd be happy to go through those one by one as we get to them after you have selected your officers.
Okay. This is Keith.
So I'll leave it to your capable hands to do the officer selection.
Okay.
I would like to nominate Dr. Ashley Duggins for president of the board for the next year.
Okay. We have one nomination. This is Keith, Dr. Duggins.
I will honorably accept that nomination. Thank you, Bill. This is Ashley.
This is Andy Bowman. I move that we close the nominations at this time.
This is Keith Vance. I will second that motion. Okay, at this time,
I will be happy, Mr. President, to do a roll call on that motion if discussion is concluded. This is Jay.
I think that would be entirely appropriate.
Okay, the motion on the floor is to select Dr. Ashley Duggins as president of the North Carolina Board of Pharmacy for the next year. That motion made by Dr. Bowman and seconded by Dr. Vance. Discussion having concluded, I will call the voting roll call. Keith.
Aye.
Ashley.
Yes.
Bill.
Aye.
Andy.
Aye.
Robert.
Yes.
And Wallace.
Yes.
Very good. Mr. President, well, now Mr. About to be former president, that motion passes unanimously. And Mr. President, I would suggest that you continue to preside through the selection of the vice president.
Okay. All right. Congratulations, Dr. Douglas. You will do a
Thank you,
fantastic
guys.
job.
Thank you very much.
And okay, now for vice president. Do we have any nominations?
This is Ashley
Thank you,
Duggan.
ma'am. Go ahead, Ashley.
This is Ashley. I would like to nominate Bill Mixon as vice president.
Any other nominations?
This is Andy Bowman. I make a motion that we close nominations at this time.
This is Keith. Mr. Mixon, do you accept that nomination?
I do. I think Wallace was trying to do something.
I was just gonna make a motion to close the nomination.
We got a motion and a second.
Second, Mr. Nelson?
I'll second.
Okay. Mr. Campbell, if you wouldn't mind doing a roll call.
I will be happy to. So, Dr. Duggins has nominated Mr. Mixon to serve as the board's vice president for the next year. Dr. Bowman has moved to close those nominations. Mr. Nelson has seconded that. And with no further discussion, we are ready to vote. I will call the roll. Keith?
Aye.
Ashley?
Aye.
Bill? I'll abstain from the vote. Andy?
Aye.
Robert?
Yes.
And Wallace?
Aye.
Very good. That then confirms by a unanimous vote with Mr. Mixon abstaining that Mr. Mixon shall serve as the board's vice president for the next year. Congratulations all.
Thank you. Jay, I just wanted to say, this is Keith, I just want to say real quick, it's been the honor of my professional career to just be on the board, but also to serve as president during the past year. And you guys are phenomenal to work with. And I appreciate y'all.
And Keith, this is Jay on staff's behalf, I absolutely reciprocate it. You have been consistently a delight and insightful president to work with. We're very, very appreciative of that.
Thank you.
Good job.
Madam President, Dr. Duggins, if it's okay with you, we could next move into committee appointments.
Sure, I might need a little help with this, but we'll get started. Thank you, guys. So we will move into the standing committee appointments, and we'll start out with budget and finance. And I'll hand that over to you, Jay.
Thank you, Dr. Duggins. So Budget and Finance Committee, I think everyone is familiar with it. And Wallace, I know you're the quote new board member, but you're certainly familiar with it. But just a reminder, the budget and, well, let me back up. All committees can be composed of no more than 3 members. The Budget and Finance Committee, currently composed of members Vance, Bowman, and Graves. As the name would suggest, the Budget and Finance Committee is responsible for reviewing and recommending to the full board a fiscal year budget, which we will hear about later in this meeting. And the Budget and Finance Committee is also responsible for overseeing the board's investment policy. Generally speaking, in a year, the Budget and Finance Committee meets once to do both of those things. But there is some amount of good work that's always done by the Budget and Finance Committee in advance of a meeting with staff to review and thoroughly and propose a budget. I will say that this year's Budget and Finance Committee did recommend, given the economic uncertain times that we are enduring at the moment, that the committee meet at least once more during the fall to review its investment policy and performance, and we have made a note of that. So that's what the Budget and Finance Committee does and who the members are. So, Madam President, I yield again to interest in service on this committee.
All right.
Jay,
So,
this is Andy Bowman. Just a point of clarification as we make these selections. Has Robert been approved? Because that could impact who we put on different committees.
This is Jay. Andy, as we sit here today, Robert remains our public member. I do not have any timeline from the boards and commissions office on that. And Robert will continue to capably serve as long as here. My suggestion would be to appoint Mr. Graves to committees as he is interested in being appointed and fitting him in. Just with the realization that we could at some point down the road have to make an adjustment on that, but that's certainly fine. But I would make appointments today with the assumption that Mr. Graves will be here for the foreseeable future.
Thank you for that clarification.
Well,
all right. So do we have any nominations for folks on the Budget and Finance Committee?
and Madam President, it's Jay again. Just that these are appointments, so we can use it in any way you wish, but we don't need to have formal motions on this. You are empowered as president to make the appointments.
Oh, that sounds powerful, Jay. Thank you. All right. So,
on Madam President, heavy load for anyone.
so currently, I would say that if the folks, Robert, if you guys are still interested, I'd say that we continue you as the Budget and Finance Committee. Are there any objections to that?
I'm fine with it. Yeah, I'm fine, Mrs. Andy. I'm fine with that. Ashley, my only comment, Ashley, would be at some point as president, I wonder if it would be beneficial for you to be on that committee.
And I'm happy to do that if Keith would like to roll off that committee.
I'm fine with that.
Okay. So that will put myself, Andy, and Robert on that committee. Jay, do we need to vote on that?
No, you do not. That is a presidential appointment. So unless you, Dr. Bowman, or Mr. Graves object or would wish not to do that, that appointment takes care of it.
All right. Sounds good. So moving to the Opioid Outreach and Education Committee. I believe that's myself and Keith, correct, Jay?
That is correct. So the two of you, that just by way of background, that committee is the one that sort of developed and landed the Stan Hayward Recovery Fund, which we're going to talk more about in a little while. Followed through on the opioid public service announcement campaign, and this past year was involved in several cooperative projects with the Attorney General's More Powerful MC campaign. It's not, Ashley, or Madam President, it's a committee that has been standing for a few years. Entirely up to you all if you want to continue that as a standing committee or not. And obviously with the COVID situation, we've not had a lot of opportunity to do anything with that committee, but certainly anticipate there would be opportunities in the near future.
Well, if that's a,
This is still the western part of the state. Since there's only two members on there, is there room for a third?
absolutely.
And is there a need for a third?
I think the more help, the better.
Okay, well, I'd like to nominate Dr. Andy Bowman for that committee. So,
Thank you,
think that
Bill.
was
Yeah,
great.
I'll be glad. Yeah, I'm glad to participate. This is Andy.
Okay. So that would keep myself, Keith, and Andy on that committee. Is that good with everyone?
I think that's a good choice. That Andy's role in academics, I think that would be a great place for him. And that was Mr. Mixon.
This is Keith. I'll serve, however you would like me to serve, so I'm fine with it.
Okay, well, if that's good with everybody, we'll have myself, Keith, and Andy on that committee.
This is Danny Beard, Madam President. I've written that down, probably a telepharmacy committee. Need to pick that one up.
Okay,
Telepharmacy committee currently composed of members Vance, Duggins, and Mr. Minton. Of course, Mr. Minton has completed his 10-year term of service on the board. So if you wish to maintain this as a 3-member committee, certainly need to be one new appointment. This work has been paused like all committees on COVID-19. Wallace, I know you've probably not been or had any reason to be privy to this, but that committee has been doing a substantial amount of work on sort of 3 big issues right now. Remote medication order entry services, their possible expansion, to teledispensing practices, and is slated to also discuss direct-to-patient automated dispensing technology issues. That committee has worked hard, done some hard and good work, and is moving through those issues. And we'll have a substantial amount of work to do once we're at a point where we can start reconvening the committee.
and this is Ashley, and I think Keith agree that we certainly need some, help. Jean was very vital to that committee, so we certainly need some additional help, because there's a lot of work to be done on that committee.
Ashley, this is Andy. I don't want to nominate myself, and I don't want to be a committee hog either, but I do have experience in remote order entry, and I'm willing to serve on that committee if you think that would be appropriate.
I think that would be great, Andy. Thank you. And Keith, are you still willing to serve on that committee?
Yes, I'll be happy to, or if someone else wants to do it, I'm happy to defer as well. I'll serve however you would like me to.
This law, I will say that, this stuff really does impact, there's a lot, I know it's big, has a big scope, but it definitely does particularly affect, probably one of the places where a lot of this stuff is occurring more than any other practice setting, but, hospitals, clinics, things like that. So, I'd be interested in participating if you think that.
And Wallace, I'm happy to.
I just think.
Wallace.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Wallace, this is Ashley. I'm happy to step off that committee so that you could serve. Certainly the hospital aspect is very important. So I'm happy to drop my spot, that way that Keith, Wallace, and Andy can carry that committee if that's good with the board. Everyone okay with that?
Yeah, that gives us a good, hospital independent and then academic can do good mix.
Okay, well, I'm happy with that if everyone else is.
Madam President, it's Jay. Just make sure I've got it right. The telepharmacy committee appointment would be members Vance, Bowman, and Nelson.
Correct.
Very good. So let it be written, so let it be done.
All right. Jay, I see this is Ashley. I see that the CPT Advisory Committee Liaison is also on the agenda. Is that something we also need to appoint as well?
Yes, it is. So just, Wallace, I'll go through this probably to refresh you. Wallace remembers that that it used to be that Dr. Betty Dennis did all of the CPT reviews and recommendations. And Wallace, that's for you the board when we formed the CPP Advisory Committee, which is made up of 5 currently practicing CPPs in North Carolina in various practice settings, and they review all incoming CPP applications for correctness, completeness, resolution of any questions, and then they make a recommendation to the board whether the application can be approved. One board member at the board made a decision several years ago to designate a board member as the CPP Advisory Committee liaison. That board member reviews the application recommendations from the advisory committee each month and has been delegated authority by the full board to approve the application, so we don't have to, so they can that can be done on a rolling basis. Mr. Mixon currently serves in that capacity, and yes, we would need to, Madam President would need to make a decision on how to proceed there.
Mr. Nixon, are you still interested in sitting on that committee?
Having continued, the workload is minimal. You have to be, monitoring your email pretty closely. I'm happy to share as well, let somebody else pick up the ball. Right, it is it's an educational. Review these applications and see what breadth and scope of where parts of practice is going in the realm of CPP practice. Do we have, Wallace, are you a CPP?
No, I'm not.
I've done it for 2 years. I'm happy to let somebody else pick it up. I'm happy to keep it.
Well, this when I was around when it falls, we all set it all up. You know, at the very beginning. Then we had a bunch of joint meetings with the medical board, you know, trying to put all this stuff together. But that's a good step of what I do about it. So,
well, let me make a recommendation. Let me recommend Wallace for that CPP Advisory Committee liaison role.
So Wallace, is that good with you? Are you ready to pick that up?
well, I mean, I would give it a try. You know, Jay just told me how it did change. You know, I don't have any objection, you know, to doing it. But I'm fine with without. I mean, it's not something I'm, you know, like chomping at the bit to do kind of thing. But I'd love to be involved at some point in time. I mean, and now
you'll get an email from the board asking you to review and approve. It could be one application, it could be up to 4 or 5 in my experience. And expediency is appreciated, I'm sure, on the part of the applicant from part. But it's not something you want to let sit in your inbox for a week. It's Jay. Can I make one suggestion on this? What I think would be useful is if we transition to a different CPP Advisory Committee liaison. I think the best way to accomplish that would be to have a meeting of the CPP Advisory Committee. We'll probably do to do that way. Have those folks come in, and then the new liaison would come in and meet, and we could talk about that. The liaison could meet all the members of the CPP Advisory Committee, have a discussion, get sort of an orientation on that, and pick it up. And so one thought I have is whether we might consider if you would be willing to continue to do this until we get to a point where we can resume some in-person meetings. And once that happens, Madam President, there's nothing that prohibits you from changing appointments during the year. And that we could have an eye toward convening the CPP Advisory Committee as soon as practicable. And that might be a time
to make a transition from Mr. Mixon to Mr. Nelson. Just a suggestion. We can handle it however you want to do it. Just a suggestion.
I think that sounds great.
And this is Wallace. I'll just say that that's probably a good idea. I probably feel a little more comfortable about it after I had a chance to really sit down and talk to Jay and talk to Bill and, get a little, better feeling for it all. So, I mean, I don't mind, like, sometime in the future, maybe if it's not even this year, just next year or something like that, of getting involved, but it might be a good idea. I'm still chairman of the county commission right now, so my mailbox stays pretty full.
Sounds like a great plan to me, so we'll
All right, so we will have Bill as the current liaison. However, Wallace will be part of that committee and will eventually transition over to the liaison.
Yeah, I think, this is Jay, what we'll do is as soon as, like I said, we're in a position to do it, we'll convene the CPC advisory committee and invite Mr. Mixon and Mr. Nelson to kind of be a part of that. To have an orientation, review, and a reset, and look at a transition at that point.
Okay, that sounds great to me. All right, so that concludes all of the committee appointments, correct, Jay?
We still got a couple. We got to go with the DME committee. As you all know, the DME committee is composed of 2 board members. That's currently Dr. Duggins and Mr. Mixon. A representative of the medical equipment suppliers. That's currently Doug Tanucci. A representative of the medical oxygen suppliers. That's currently Wade Dahlberg. And a representative of rehabilitation technology suppliers. That's currently Ed Dressen. As you all also know, you recently completed a rulemaking that changed the method of selecting the DME committee to an appointed committee rather than an elected one. Each of the DME segment representatives, Mr. Tanucci, Mr. Dahlberg, and Mr. Dressen, have indicated that they would like to continue to serve. Cindy Perrin solicited interest from any DME persons in charge who might be interested in taking a seat on the committee, received no responses. So, Madam President, you would need to appoint 2 board members to this committee. That's currently you and Mr. Mixon. And since there has been no other interest, the recommendation would be that the board would vote to approve the existing DME representatives, Mr. Tanucci, Mr. Dahlberg, and Mr. Dressen, to reappoint them to the committee. Clint, did I get that right? That's correct.
All right, so we should start with the 2 board members first, right, Jay?
Madam President, yes, I believe that'd be the best way to go.
Okay. I'm happy if somebody else has interest in that committee. I'm happy to, come off that committee if someone else on the board would be interested in that. I know Bill is currently on there, but if anyone else is interested in that committee, I'm happy to roll off that committee. Do we have any interest? If not, I'm happy to stay on that committee.
Madam President, it sounds like you're on the DME committee for life.
It does sound like that. So myself, Ashley, and Bill will be on that committee. And then I guess we also need to move over to those other members. And Jay, you may have to repeat those names again. I'm sorry, I didn't catch all of those.
No. Happy to do that. This is Jay. My suggestion would be, Madam President, that you entertain a motion to reappoint Doug Tanucci as the medical equipment supplier representative to the committee, Wade Dahlberg as the medical oxygen supplier representative to the committee, and Ed Dressen as the rehabilitation technology supplier representative to the committee.
Okay, so Let's entertain a motion to bring Doug Tanucci, Lee Dahlberg, and Ed Dressen back on that committee. Do I have a motion?
Please, I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Robert. Do you have a second?
Excellent second.
Okay.
Let me, I will do the roll call, Madam President, if you'd like.
Great.
So we have a motion on the floor from Mr. Graves, seconded by Mr. Nixon, to reappoint the three DME market segment representatives to the DME subcommittee. There being no further discussion, I will call the roll. Ashley.
Yes,
Bill. I am in favor of the motion. Keith. Aye. Andy. Aye. Robert.
Yes.
And Wallace. Aye. Madam President, that motion passes unanimously.
all right. So I think we also have the North Carolina PHP Board of Director appointment as well.
That is correct, Madam President. As you all know, and I know Mr. Jordan, the CEO, I'm sorry, Dr. Jordan, the CEO of North Carolina Professional Health Program, is on the line as well. So if anybody needs to ask any questions, but the Board of Pharmacy designates two members of the North Carolina Professional Health Program Board of Directors. Our current designees are Mr. Minton and Mr. Graves. Note that the board is not required to appoint current PD members to that board of directors. You may appoint who you wish to appoint. And the board has appointed both current and past board members over the years. So this would, I believe, Madam President, probably be best accomplished by a motion and vote as well.
All right.
This is Robert. I would like to continue to serve if it's okay.
This is Bill Nixon. I would like to serve in that role.
This is Andy. I'll make a motion to put Bill Nixon on that committee in replacement of Dean.
And this is Jay. Andy, would that motion also include reappointing or redesignated Mr. Graves as our designee?
Yes, that's great.
All right, so it looks like we have a motion from Dr. Bowman to have Robert and Bill. Is there a second?
I ask for some discussion.
Go for it.
Bill. The motion. I'm sorry, Bill. This is Jay. Real quick, do we have a second on the motion? We need a second to go into discussion.
This is Wallace. I'll second.
Excellent. Sorry for the interruption, Bill.
No, thank you for, sorry I jumped the gun. I just want to make sure that there's nobody else that has a burning desire to serve in that capacity. Yes, I would like to serve, but I don't want to be, if somebody has a really strong interest in that, but just make a case, I'm happy to step back. Well, I don't hear any discussion, so I'm happy to serve in that role. Thank you.
So seeing none, do we have a second? Well, we got a second, so I guess we need to take a vote.
Madam President, I'd be happy to call the roll if it's the appropriate time.
There's no other discussion. I think that's perfect.
Very good. So a motion has been made by Mr. Mixon and seconded by Mr. Nelson to designate Mr. Mixon and Mr. Graves as the North Carolina Board of Pharmacy designees to the North Carolina Professional Health Program Board of Directors. There being no further discussion, I will call the roll. Ashley?
Mike?
Bill? Abstain from the vote. I believe Mr. Dr. Bowman made the motion. I'm sorry, you're correct. Thanks for the correction. That motion was made by Dr. Bowman. Thanks, Bill. Keith? Aye. Andy? Aye. And Andy, I apologize, I goofed that up. Robert? Aye. And Wallace? Aye. Very good, Madam President. That motion passes unanimously with Mr. Mixon abstaining.
So, Jay, unless I missed anything, I believe that is the last of committee appointments, and we can move on to the Stan Haywood Recovery Fund update.
That's correct, Madam President. No further appointments to be made. Of course, everybody knows this, but during the course of the year, you may, as you see fit, wish to form other committees to do other things, and as that happens, then Ashley, you as president would appoint the membership of those committees. Yes, Madam President, our next item on the agenda would be an update from North Carolina Professionals Health Program on the Stan Haywood Recovery Fund, and I know that Dr. Jordan is on the line to provide that.
Yes, sir, I am. I'm ready to proceed if Madam President is okay with that.
Yes, please. Thank you. This is Ashley.
Okay. So this is Dr. Joe Jordan. I'm with the North Carolina Professionals Health Program. I'm going to report on the Stan Haywood Recovery Fund to this body. I do want to go through some brief history. As some of you may be aware, this fund was formed in January of 2018, and at that point had a thing essentially saying recovery support program for pharmacists and registered pharmacy technicians. That in May of 2018 was the name of that fund was changed to the L. Stan Haywood Recovery Fund in honor of Stan Haywood. That fund was funded by this organization with $1.1 million in 2018. Madam President, I'm just going to run through these numbers and we'll be happy to take some questions at the end of my presentation, if that is okay with you. So proceeding, we have currently awarded a total of $125,000 or $125,500. And there's the current balance of this fund is $951,860,000.09 as of this morning. And let's see, in 2018, $49,275 was awarded. In 2019, $48,000 was awarded. And up until March of 2020, $28,283 was awarded. And so that the way this fund works is that that original amount was placed in an investment account with UBS Financial Services. That $1 million is to be kept intact at all times, and any generation of funds up and above that $1 million mark is to be used for the awarding of scholarships in either assessment to help defray the cost. It will not cover the entire cost, but to defray the cost of a clinical assessment procedure to determine if the person needs further treatment, residential treatment expense to the total of $5,000. Total can be given out, or outpatient therapy amounts can be given out. And so we have been doing so, and despite a 23% drop in the first quarter of 2020 and I don't mean to give anyone PTSD in regards to their retirement or investment accounts. But obviously the market has had a difficult year. As of February 1st, the market was at 28,992. By the time it stopped its free fall on March 23rd, it had gone down over 10,000 points to 18,591. It's currently sitting at 25,080. That may be changing. That was a snapshot from this morning. So despite that, however, with the fund being at $951,860, we have temporarily stopped dispersing funds. This has happened a couple of times. If we drop below the $1 million mark in the fund balance, we have to temporarily stop awarding scholarships. Now, to help with that potential and actual stoppage that has occurred, I think we're at the third time that has happened. We have begun soliciting contributions to this fund on our website with a link to the North Carolina Board of Pharmacy website when persons are completing their reapplication process. I'm happy to say that we have had a total of $300 in contributions to that, despite the fact that we're not at a current relicensure cycle. I would anticipate that when people begin the relicensure process, and I'm not as familiar as I could be with that, but I believe y'all send reminders out in September and allow people to begin their relicensure for 2021 at that time. I'm hopeful that we will have more contributions to that fund.
President, just real quick on the rules on that. So, members, if you have logged on to your profile through the licensing portal, you will see that all licensees as well as permits now have a tile. It's not just available during the renewal process. It's there throughout at any time, that if a pharmacist or a facility or some other place wishes to make a contribution to the Haywood Recovery Fund, pharmacists can click on that tile and that will take them directly to a landing page at NCPHP to make a contribution in the amount, obviously, that the donor chooses. And so it will probably, as Joe referred to, that's very likely to get most traffic during the renewal period, as everybody's got a lot of operation lots during the period. But we do have that set up and operating. Joe, I apologize. I just wanted to make sure all the members knew about that.
No, Joe, thank you for jumping in and clarifying on that. And Mr. Campbell, you always have an invitation that during one of my reports, there's some clarifying statements that are needed. Please feel free to jump in. So I can, if you wish, for 2020, I can break down the number of applications that we received and were approved for the first quarter, and who received those. If you wish, Madam President, please let me know if you would like that.
I think that would be great if that's okay with the board.
Hey, Ashley, this is JP. I just had a question on the accounting side of things, since the balance is below $1 million. Joe, do you guys have a game plan? I think you said UBS is the investment firm that you have it linked with. Do you guys have like a receivable on your books right now, or a something that you owe to get the $1 million in principal back to where it is? Is there sort of a game plan in place, and are the contributions being received now going to replenish that principal amount, or is that just being used for operating expenses currently?
There's no operating. I believe it was JP that said this. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah.
We do not charge any operating expenses for this fund. There are some operating expenses which are minimal with UBS, but the plan is to all contributions go straight into the fund. And our hope is that the market will recover enough to where the balance is above the $1 million limit, which is where once it gets above $1 million, then we can start the process of dispersing funds again. JP, does that answer your question since we're on maybe?
Sure. Yeah, that's great.
Ask more. Okay.
And everybody, this is Jay. So everybody knows the fund is governed by an agreement, a contract between the Board of Pharmacy and NCPHD that governs each of these contingencies, and I can sort of reassure everyone that NCPHD is fully abiding by the terms of that agreement.
Okay. Any additional questions from anyone? Hearing none, Madam President, for 2020, we had 11 applications come in and 11 were approved. We had 1 student that was awarded funds, 2 technicians, and 6 pharmacists. 5 of the awards were in the area of assessment. 3 of the awards were in the area of residential treatment, and 3 were for outpatient therapy. So that was actually a total of $35,000 that went out. But we had refunds from providers that where they did not need all the scholarship funds, or perhaps a participant did not go to all of their outpatient therapy or to the assessment. So the total funds disbursed, as I said, were $28,283. And there is one thing, Madam President, that I would bring up just for potential discussion at some point. I don't know that it's appropriate for right now, because I think it's something that needs to be looked at by the board. But just as an idea when we set up the scholarship fund for eligibility, we required that the pharmacy technicians be registered with the board for 5 years, and that they be at their current job for 2 years. And so that has been working okay, but we have had 6 people who needed scholarships that had registered in the 2020 and actually needed some help. And these were people that were referred to us by the board due to some history that created for the board the idea that they should be referred to NCPHP. So they were registered in 2020, but they were not eligible due to that registration. And so we have had one person that was not eligible based on the work criteria. So at some point we may want to revisit that. Now I don't think would be a time to take that into consideration, for the main fact that we're not providing any scholarships at this time due to the performance or lack thereof of the stock market. But as we move towards the re-registration period, as Mr. Campbell pointed out, that's when we'll probably get more traffic on the website or at the profile. We may see an increase in funds coming in. So, and Madam President, we can certainly talk about this later. Mr. Campbell, we can talk about this later, but just the idea, this has been advanced from some of the persons that perform the clinical assessments, where they feel, for lack of a better term, just feel bad for the technicians who would like to get some help, but due to financial resources, they are not able to do so. So it's something to consider later, but I think at this time it's not prudent given the fund balance, which is actually below the $1 million mark, which is preventing us from getting any funds out at this time. And that concludes my report, Madam President. I'm happy to take any questions or comments from anyone at this time.
Okay, thank you so much for the update. I just had a quick question. This is Ashley. So you'll update us when that fund balance goes above that, and at that point in time, we can consider changing the parameters of that.
Yes, we do a weekly check-in on that, and I have been in contact with UBS to see if there's any changes recommended in regards to investing. The current volatility of the market has led them to advise that we not make any changes. We're in a diversified portfolio of mutual funds at this time, which have generated a fair amount. I mean, to look at the amount that we are only down about $28,000 if you look at the original fund amount plus what we've given out, and for the market to be where it is, I think we've generated a fair amount of funds above and beyond that have been awarded. So yes, ma'am, short answer is yes. As soon as it gets to that mark, I will advise Mr. Campbell that we will begin, and he can advise the board, of course.
Thank you, Dr. Jordan. Does any other board members have any other questions?
Yes, this is Bill Mixon. Joe, what was the success of fundraising at last year's renewal period?
It was not available last year, sir. We just had this put in.
Okay.
Bill, this is Jay. Yeah, the programming on that was completed, Joe, about 8 weeks ago. I think we completed it right about the time that the plague descended upon us, and so we wanted to get it up and work out any bugs that we might have, although we haven't had any that I'm aware of, and this will be the first year that it's available throughout the renewal period. So certainly be watching that with interest. And real quick, Madam President, with respect to eligibility criteria, yes, I will certainly report to the board when the time might be appropriate on that. And that might be the kind of thing, Madam President, that if the board wants to consider altering the eligibility criteria, that might be exactly the kind of thing to appoint maybe a 2-person committee to liaise with NCPHP on that, and be able to go through the reasons that the eligibility criteria were set as they were when the fund was formed in 2018. And if we wanted to make changes, I'd be happy to get Bob Saunders involved, Brooke Spears, who was the author of the documents that govern the agreement, and he could help guide a committee through recommendations and procedures to make a full recommendation to the full board.
All right, that sounds great. Is there any other board comments or questions for Dr. Jordan? All right. Thank you, Dr. Jordan, very much for your presentation and for all that you do. And if it's okay with you, Jay, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, consideration of the COVID-19 drug preservation rule.
Thanks, and actually the answer always is, if that's what the president needs to do, it's always okay with me. Joe, thank you, brother, for promoting in. I hope we'll get a chance to visit here in the not too distant future. With that then, Madam President, I'd like to turn to we're ready for action on the temporary rulemaking of the COVID-19 drug preservation rule, and I'm going to hand this over to Mr. Pinion to go through where we are and how we got here and what our options are.
Mr. Campbell, this is Joe Jordan. I'm sorry that I got cut off there. Thank y'all very much for letting me be there. I picked up my phone and inadvertently hit the hang up. So thanks very much, and I'll sign off at this time.
Thanks, Joe.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
All right, thanks, Jay. This is Paulette. Everyone except Wallace will remember that back at the start of the plague, the state helped
Director, and the Secretary of Health and Human Services asked the board, the Med Board, and ultimately the Nursing Board to pass a rule to ensure that drugs that are being touted or explored for treatment of COVID remain available to those with actual FDA-approved uses for those drugs. There are similar rules in other states. Some are different than others. Ours is different in a few respects from most others in that it does not prohibit or limit prescribing of any of the listed drugs for COVID. But, well, it does limit it. It does not prohibit it. It does require written diagnoses to be included with prescriptions, and if the diagnosis is for the treatment or prevention of COVID, that the initial prescription is limited to 14 days, and there be subsequent prescriptions issued for 14 days, rather than longer prescriptions. Since that rule was passed, it indeed has come to pass that most of the drugs listed in that rule have been the subject of shortages and have been listed on the FDA drug shortage list. So, y'all adopted an emergency rule back in March. We have now published it for notice and comment. The comment period ended on May 1st. This is for a temporary rule. Temporary rule lasts longer than an emergency rule. It lasts up to 270 days after it's been published, after you adopt it. So it lasts up to next year. Comment period ended. No comments were received. We got the public hearing a couple weeks ago. No one appeared at that. So now this is right for y'all to adopt. If you adopt the temporary rule again, it'll be in effect till March or April of next year. You can shorten it and repeal it if you want later, or you can go through the process to make it a permanent rule should the plague continue beyond that period.
This is Jay. One slight amendment to what Clint said. We did hold the comment period open through May 11th with, out of an abundance of caution that because we had to switch the public hearing from an in-person public hearing to a telephone conference hearing, we wanted to give ample time for anyone who unexpectedly found themselves unable to comment as a result of that would have an extra few days to do so. And board staff did not receive any comments in the additional period of time.
Madam President, this is now right for motions and or discussion.
So in the words of Keith Vance, what is the board's pleasure?
Motion to approve, says Paul Nixon.
Second, says Andy Bowman.
So we have a motion and a second. Jay, would you like to do roll call, or is there any further discussion from the board?
Hearing none, Madam President, this is Jay. I'd be more than happy to call the roll. We have a motion by Mr. Mixon, seconded by Dr. Bowman, to approve the temporary COVID-19 drug preservation rule as published. And I will now call the roll. Please signify by aye or nay. Ashley.
Aye.
Bill. Aye. Keith. Aye. Andy.
Aye, and my nails are open
voted a little early, a little premature there. He said yes as well.
Robert?
Aye.
Ann Wallace?
Aye.
Good, Madam President, that motion passes unanimously. Clint, I don't know, do you want to give a very quick about what happens now?
I will send that to the Rule Review Commission in a couple of days. It will be on their June agenda for consideration, and the emergency rule stays in effect until all the process plays out there. And I assume that we will have no problem with that. Don't know the schedule that the Med Board and Nursing Board are on, but it's highly possible it will be at the same meeting with the same rule to present.
All right, so we can move to the next item on the agenda. The consideration of adoption of 46.2017. Mr. Campbell?
Thank you, Madam President. This is Jay. As you know, at the very beginning of this meeting, we had a public hearing on adoption, amendment, and repeal of various rules governing how the board conducts the procedures governing board hearings. At that time, I ran back through the reasons for that, reasons that you all will be familiar with from that and from the original publication of the rules. As you all know, board staff did not receive any comments on this rule, either written comments before today's public hearing or obviously during today's public hearing. So these rules now sit ready for action by the full board. Those actions could, of course, include approving the rules as published. They would then move forward to the Rules Review Commission process. The board could vote to not approve those rules. They would end at that point. Or the board could take it under advisement for any further contemplation that you might wish to have on it. And let me briefly make sure here Mr. Pinion has a chance to weigh in and fill in any oversights or correct any misstatements on my part.
Yeah, I certainly, there have not been any misstatements or any oversight. I will say, just as a brief summary and perhaps most for Wallace's benefit, our hearing rules are 30 plus years old. Over the 30 plus years, because of changes in the APA and changes in our practices, they still sort of 98% square up with the APA and what we do, but it's gotten out of square a little bit. Of course, we follow the APA regardless of what our rules have said, but it'd be nice to have them match up. Perhaps even more important, the rules come from another era in an attempt to restate things from the APA, which is always problematic and which will cause things to get out of square. This takes out all the attempts to restate things from the APA and gets a lot more clean and addresses only the things it needs to address and addresses a lot of procedural things that have not heretofore been addressed. And in every instance where we could, we thought, how can we make things easier for us and easier for parties in terms of the way they serve things, the way they file things with the board, and the like, to make things as smooth as we can while we're doing this. So that's what we're about. These are permanent rules. If proposed, they will go to the Rule Review Commission. I am confident in light of their scope, the Rules Review Commission lawyers will have numerous corrections and questions to them to fit their style and preferred way of doing things that we will deal with, and they will be presented to the Rule Review Commission at an appropriate time.
Thanks, Clint. Madam President, I yield the floor.
All right, is there any questions or comments from any board member?
I just would like a little clarification on what is meant by the statement that, bringing the rules into compliance with the board's actual practice, removing unnecessary and dangerous attempts to summarize substantive standards. What's that referring to?
Well, we have a rule now that says you have a right to a hearing if X, Y, Z, for example. That's something that the APA provides the substantive who has a right to a hearing. If you attempt to restate that, either, one of two things, it's unnecessary or it's incorrect. And so there are a number of efforts in the existing rules to repeat things, and it's understandable, but, to try to be a one-stop resource. But, the current zeitgeist of rulemaking is that you should not attempt to make a rule that repeats what a statute requires. You should add only the necessary mechanics of how that works.
Madam President, it's Jay. I'd like to follow up on that with Bill. Bill, I know this from when I first started here and was still overlapping with Dr. Work, and it used to be the case that it was the common practice when any agency, not just our agency, would try to write rules that, for the reasons Clint said, folks would try to sort of impound everything from a statute and repeat it in some way into a rule. And that is, not only is that something that's not favored anymore, it's actually something that Rules Review Commission standards prohibit us from doing. So this is a way of, just like Clint said, don't try to reinvent the statutory wheel in a rule, because it's just repetitive at best, and at worst it could conflict or be perceived to conflict with the statute in some way, and that creates confusion.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry for that.
It's a good question, because, like Clint said, I think all of our sort of general way of being here is to want to say, okay, we want to have this one thing somebody can go read and everything is there. And that intuitively makes a lot of sense. So I always appreciate you asking the question.
And Bill, frankly, in terms of outright conflict, the only thing that I can think of now that was an outright conflict is our rules permitted the DME subcommittee to hold hearings regarding DME permits, which is certainly now not permitted by the APA, which requires the actual board to hold hearings. There's something else in there. There are some things that may be more restrictive than the APA that we try to get rid of, but I can't think of anything else in there that is just outright it conflicts the APA, and frankly, because it is, we never had any hearings before the DME.
Well, this is Wallace. I know you had offered to, press the call the last couple of days, but I didn't ever get these things open until yesterday. But anyway, I guess just because I haven't been in the discussions about all of this, the overflow of, pre-hearing conferences, I see that kind of thing. I don't know whether that terminology is in here now, like we used to call it pre-hearing conferences with individual board members. That flow is pretty much the same, that you would basically have an issue, and it would be with a pre-hearing conference that ultimately could wind up as a hearing. Is that?
Yes. Well, this is
almost entirely, at least insofar as the faces the board members, attempt to make the rules match as closely as possible to the current practice, which is very much similar to the practice that you would remember. There are some sort of back office litigation type things. For example, the way you have to provide the parties and party have to provide us documents that change to be easier, but you would recognize the current practice, and the current practice is incorporated in these rules.
Okay, so again, that sounds good. I mean, that's what I understood today, and that's sort of what it looked like when I read through them. But the other, this is sort of the second question, and I guess you guys can talk about it, but I remember back in the past that there was always a very, you really ask yourself once, ask yourself twice, 3 times. Going to rules review opens up everything. And have you, I'm sure you have, sort of anticipated any blowback kind of situations that, from this that, we just leave well enough alone rather than take a chance to get something you don't like and have to.
That's a good question. That's a good question, Long. I don't have any concerns about that because, these are procedural things. And if the worst case scenario is the Rule Review Commission says, we don't like any of these changes, you can't make any of these changes, and we'll be doing what we're doing now, and the rules will be less clear for everybody, and we'll just have to live with it. So that is unlike, if we change one little phrase in the permit rule that opens up the whole permit rule, and they can throw, our whole permitting scheme into chaos. So I'm not worried about that. And in 10 years that you have been off the board, there has never been a time we have not been able to satisfy the Rule Review Commission's concerns and questions.
Okay, that's good.
I'm sorry, Walt.
No, I said that just sounds good. I'm impressed.
I think what we anticipate in terms of what the Review Commission involvement on this one is what Clint alluded to is that when you're talking about writing legal procedural rules, that's like a catnip to lawyers for wordsmithing and the like. So I think what we anticipated is we might have more than the usual amount of back and forth in terms of technical changes, wording changes. But I share Clint's view that that there is very little, if anything, with a substantive risk here.
That's right. With the things you don't see are anytime we do a rule, we'll get back 3 pages of questions and comments from Rule Review Commission on every single rule. Half of it is little typos or things they'd rather see done differently style-wise. Half of it is just questions so that they can understand how the rule operates, so they can explain it to the commissioners. I say there's going to be a large volume only because if you get 3 pages on one rule, we're going to get 50 pages on these of various of those sorts of things to work through. But I don't think it would be a problem at all.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other discussion or questions for Clint?
Madam President, Jay, real quick, just a final cap. Wallace, as someone, you even more than me, but as someone who came on board here at a time when the relationship with the Rules Review Commission was probably about as low as it could be, it's almost the complete opposite now. And it's due to a lot of hard and good work by Clint, but we really have a terrific working relationship now. with the staff attorneys over at the Rules Review Commission. And so while we get a lot of those types of questions and the like, we have found them without fail to be asking questions and making suggestions in complete good faith and entirely receptive to our explanations and opportunities to do that. So it really has been something that used to be a sore spot is now a very smooth process.
And that's true for both ends. Both the board has done a lot of work to smooth over things, and the Rule Review Commission blockers are not complete goobers anymore, so that also has helped.
Well, this is wrong. I just don't want to do anything that, finds anything that, we find that have to be in court with them again, because that sure does sour the relationship real quick.
Yeah, none of us want that.
Okay, so would anyone like to entertain a motion?
Well, I'll move to approve the, proposed changes. Is that how I should be worded?
Well, that'll work.
I'll second that motion.
All right,
This is
do we have a motion and a second? Jay, would you like to do the roll call on that?
I would be delighted, Madam President. So we have a motion by Mr. Nelson, seconded by Dr. Vance to approve the published additions, amendments, and repeals to the board's hearing procedure rules as published. And with no further discussion, I will call the voting roll. Ashley.
Aye.
Bill. Keith. Andy.
Ahoy.
Andy's turned into Alexander Graham Bell out there. Robert.
Aye.
And Wallace.
Aye.
Madam President, that motion passes unanimously, and so the rules are approved by the board and will move into the Rule Review Commission process.
All right, so Jay, it is 11:47. I don't know if folks want to take like a 10-minute break. I don't know how much longer. It looks like there's several more items on the agenda. Would anybody like to take a break, or who votes that we keep moving?
That's good, whatever y'all want to do.
Just wrong. If we can take just a short break, it'd be great.
All right, so how about a 10-minute break, Jay? Does that work?
Sounds good here. Well, I would just make it a nice round number. We'll reconvene at noon. And if possible, folks, if you can keep your lines open, keep them open.
You mean stay on the line?
Yeah, stay on the line. Although if you carry your phone while you're having certain biological needs, be sure you do press mute on your microphone.
All
right.
All right, well, Madam President, we'll reconvene at noon then.
Perfect.
about the retreat a little bit later in the agenda, but our plan was that we were going to have in-person ethics refresher training at the July retreat. That is not going to happen because of COVID-19 matters. So some of you have deadlines coming up pretty quickly on refresher ethics training. I've gotten the okay from the Ethics Commission to not get too excited about those deadlines if we're going to have in-person training in July, since we're not. Mr. Mixon, I know, has completed his refresher training. His deadline was June 15th, so that's done. Thank you, Bill, for doing that. Andy, you have a deadline of June 6th, D-Day, and Robert, you have a deadline of June 7th. D-Day +1, and then Ashley, you're the next one coming up August 29th. So if you all would just make sure that between now and these due dates that you do the online refresher training module, and I've given you a link in that, and just send your certificate on so that Leslie and I can file them. Again, Bill, thank you for getting yours knocked out. Keith, yeah, I'm sure it was. Keith, you, me, and Wallace, none of us are due until next year. So that's all I have, Madam President, on this agenda item, but obviously happy to answer any questions.
All right, if there are no further questions, we can move to the next item on the agenda, which is the COVID-19 matters.
Madam President, that's probably, that title taken aside, probably literally encompass a million things, but I just want to focus on a couple of things for present purposes. Obviously, this month saw the graduation of the pharmacy school class of 2020, and we are moving into the June to August period, which is, as you would expect, the heaviest licensure testing time. Pearson VUE, which administers these tests, the NAPLEX and the MPJE, on behalf of NABP, does of course have testing centers that are open all over the country. Right now, a number of those testing centers are operating at reduced capacity due to COVID-19 social distancing requirements. There are additional sites that are continuing to come online, and how many of those will come, additional ones will come online, what the capacity of the existing sites will be, will depend, of course, on how local and state requirements to ensure the public health and safety evolve over time. But these sites are open, and folks are scrambling to get those seating sites. I think you all know that each year, under ordinary times, board staff at least get lots of calls ranging from the mildly hyperventilating to the full-on sort of seizure disorder, the licensure candidates who are doing residencies. Do note that historically speaking, residents had a July 1st licensing deadline, and that's not a legal thing. That was a product of ASHP resident accreditation standards. ASHP has, however, and it's in a memo I attached to your materials, has extended the residency licensure requirement to January 1st of 2021. There will be coming online in as early as mid-June, but no later than the beginning of July, a remote proctored MPJE option that licensure candidates will be able to take at home. That, of course, is a positive development because it then means that pharmacy licensure applicants aren't scrambling to try to get seated in a Pearson VUE testing center twice, once for NAPLEX and once for MPJE. You're only looking at one seat for the NAPLEX. And then a reminder, of course, that pharmacy school attendees and graduates who are awaiting licensure are pharmacy interns under North Carolina law, and therefore they can engage in all acts that constitute the practice of pharmacy, so long as they're doing so under the supervision of a North Carolina licensed pharmacist. So new graduates can, and I'm sure already have, step in immediately to provide a full range of services to the public. So this is a changing environment. I continue to have frequent conversations with NABP and others about capacity and staffing, and board staff are working to provide possible contingencies for your consideration about licensing if there is a pressing need on that. So if there's anything further on that to discuss, we can certainly discuss that at the June meeting. But let me pause there and see if there are any questions from the members about the testing, the landscape as we sit here today. Hearing none then, just very quickly, our use of the NABP passport system continues to go pretty smoothly. Missy, are you online?
I'm here.
I'm not hearing Missy, but just very briefly, we've gone over this with you all before. We continue to get passport holders who are eligible to practice during the state of emergency in North Carolina by the end of that passport. The numbers are in the several hundreds, although as I've discussed before, I don't think that's because even a significant fraction of those folks are actually practicing North Carolina. They're simply obtaining a passport for every state that recognizes it. Weekly, we get an updated list from NABP pharmacists who have obtained a passport that we publish through a link on the website and through the licensure verification page, so that potential employers have an easy method to determine whether someone does in fact have a passport. That continues to move along pretty smoothly. So that's all I've got on those issues. Again, happy to answer any questions on that.
And there doesn't appear to be any questions. We can move to the next item on the agenda, final version of the compounding oversight memorandum of understanding.
Ashley, thank you on that. At long last, a final version of the MOU has been birthed at FDA, and just to reset the table in a shortish period of time, I certainly hope, as you all know, in 2013, Congress passed and the President signed into law the DQSA, the Drug Quality Security Act of 2013, that came in response to the NECP compounding tragedy. That statute a number of things in terms of clarifying the relationship between federal and state authorities when it comes to regulating prescription drug compounding, set in place what I believe are fairly clear standards and requirements that have to be adhered to in order for a pharmacy to compounded drug products. A part of that statute, that by default, said that a pharmacy could not dispense more than 5% of its prescription drug product interstate. Now, FDA has not enforced that since the statute was passed. And the other option, and there was an escape clause from that, which said that if a state and the FDA enter into an agreement to regulate the inordinate amount of interstate compounding, then the regulation of that interstate compounding would be subject to the terms of the Memorandum of Understanding. There was an initial version that was published for notice and comment in 2015, which are providing comments on. There was a second version published in 2018, that our board also provided comments on, and I have included in your materials the letter that we sent in 2018 providing comment. The FDA has now published the final version of the MOU. It is not, when the MOU is open for state boards of pharmacy to sign on to if they wish, then then FDA will not begin enforcing the 5% rule for 1 year from that date. And FDA anticipates that clock will start ticking in about 30 days. So we have a year and let's say 3 odd weeks in which to consider whether we wish to sign on to the MOU. And just by preview, I don't think that's a decision that we should make today. We need to have time to review it and be thoughtful about that, as I know you will. I will note that the current version of the MOU incorporates almost every suggestion that you made to the FDA about improving the MOU in a way that would make it a workable agreement between any state board of pharmacy and the FDA. The key issue that remains or has always existed in the MOU is the data collection and reporting requirements that would go along as a signatory to MOU. And we've had concerns, and other boards certainly have as well, about whether we have the manpower, et cetera, to do the kind of data collection and reporting that was contemplated. I think a lot of you know that NABP has been given by FDA a significant grant to develop a data collection and reporting system that MOU states can use if they wish to satisfy the MOU. That the creation of that's in early going, but the basic framework anticipates that if a signatory state to the MOU wished, compounding pharmacies in that state will report certain data to NABP through the existing e-profile system. NABP will compile that data, peer reports from the state board of pharmacy, and if the state board authorized NABP submit to the FDA as a means of satisfying that requirement. And so that system is going to need to be piloted. NABP anticipates launching the pilot of that early this fall. If it works, I think it makes a pretty good case for us to sign on to the MOU. If it doesn't, that they change the calculation some and perhaps substantially. So the other thing I did want to emphasize is FDA has made it pretty clear. I thought it was implicit earlier throughout this, but FDA has now made quite clear is that if a state enters into the MOU, it means, of course, that compounding pharmacies within that state are not subject to a 5% interstate shipment rule. But it does not mean under the MOU that if a pharmacy is found to be shipping interstate in a way that exceeds the quote inordinate amount calculation, that doesn't mean they have to stop or ratchet back to some number. All the inordinate amount calculation triggers is certain reporting requirements. I think that clarity is a very welcome piece of clarity, and I think it really bears a great deal on our thought process about whether to enter into this. So let me stop. I'm happy to talk as much about the MOU as you'd like. I think that, again, Paul, what we want to do is keep thinking about this to look if there's an opportunity, and I believe there will be, for us to be a participant in the pilot program that NABP is launching, which would help us make a very informed decision about what our costs and benefits would be entering into this MOU. So let me stop it. Probably too much more already.
Happy to answer questions.
Jay, it appears that there may not be any questions on this.
Yeah, it's an awful lot to try to digest, and I apologize if you didn't get this earlier than you did, but you got it as soon as I did. And we're not in any rush, so, Madam President, if it's okay with you, I think maybe what I'll do is keep relisting this for discussion on the agenda, in the months going forward, and we can, continue to have a discussion about it and make a good decision about whether to enter into it.
I think that's perfect.
Jay, this is Andy. Would it be appropriate to just add that to our retreat agenda?
Yeah, I think it would be absolutely a good retreat item, and of course, I want us to have the answer is yes, but also there's some decisions that we need to make about the retreat later on the agenda. Yes, this is a perfect retreat agenda item.
All right, seeing that we're going to move this to the retreat for discussion, Jay, if you'd like to move on to the next topic of legislative update.
Happy to do so. As you all know, the legislature is meeting. It passed, and we've already discussed the COVID-19 response bills. Two new bills have been introduced that do bear directly on what the board does. The first is Senate 177 and Act 1053, which is a continuing refinement to the military occupational licensure statute. I've summarized that in your material. So the short version is neither Clint nor I think that there's anything about this bill that would change anything about what we're doing or having it. We may have to put some additional things on the website, which is fine, but it actually brings some clarity, some other requirements. Clint, anything you want to chime in on that one? Nope. So I don't have any concerns. If that bill passes as is, there's no concerns from a staff level about it. The other bill maybe is a little more concerning, a bill called Senate 773 entitled the University of Licensure Recognition Act has been introduced. The way I characterize it is it seems above all things to be a means forcing occupational licensing boards in a state that don't have some method of reciprocating licenses from another state to have one or have one imposed upon them. Obviously, we already do have a robust and simple reciprocity mechanism for pharmacists, and there's no need to have any reciprocity for technicians, that, as we know and have discussed many times. Clint and I have a little bit of a concern about this bill. We have some concern about whether it potentially could prevent us from requiring the MPJE for reciprocity candidate, and maybe some concerns that we might have less flexibility to deny reciprocity application if the candidate, for example, lied on the application, but once we discover the true facts, it wouldn't have been disqualifying. On the other hand, the bill also states that nothing in it should be construed to invalidate any existing reciprocity agreement between the occupational licensing board of the state and the jurisdiction. And the MPJ is a part of the agreement among the states to participate in the NABP ELTP program. So I guess I'm not super concerned about. I don't know how concerned we need to be about this. But let me also deal quickly with Clint here, who has some input on that.
Yeah, and I don't have anything to change about that. I would say I don't know that it is a complete nightmare itself to pass, because although it would require us to it did certain people, licensure. It certainly would not stop us from saying, here's your license. We found out why, so here is also your notice for revocation if that's the way you want to play it. So I think we would have flexibility to ensure, that the appropriate people are ultimately licensed. Just, we might have to do some filtering.
Okay, Mr. Barnes. It's kind of addressing if military, when they get transferred around the country, their spouses, find employment in that field.
No. The Universal License Recognition Act, it could have that effect, but that's not its purpose. The other, H.S. 717 and H. 1053, that bill does speak specifically to military members and spouses, and that's really just a fairly minor refinement to the long-standing statute governing former military spouses. And we implemented that statute, 5-6 years ago now at least. And so that we got no concerns about the refinements there, and the process that we have built in for military trained applicants and military spouses, whether they be pharmacists or technicians, that thing hums right along. So no concern about that. We're good on that. Yeah. Like I say, Rob, the only thing we might need to do if that refinement passes would be to add certain things to our website. And really the things that they are saying we might need to add to the website are things that the bill already says we were to provide to the Department of Veterans Affairs in North Carolina to add to theirs. So again, no problems with any of that. But I think Missy could tell you that military applicants or military spouse applicants have found our process very easy and very quick for that. So.
And Jay, I would say, Robert, what's behind this is these are some members of the General Assembly who have been very interested in reducing barriers to occupational licensing. Generally, in a lot of the more far-reaching efforts have stalled, and I expect this is something that they think they might actually get done by saying, well, certainly, if you can be a plumber in New Jersey, you can be a plumber in North Carolina. And so we have no more barriers here than anywhere else. And that's what motivates it.
I agree with that, and I think for most certainly for the healthcare professions and most of the other professions, there are mechanisms for reciprocity, whether it be a reciprocity arrangement like we have, or compacts and the like. For this tends to come up more often, including a very good example in the skilled trades arena, where there tends not to be any sort of reciprocity. If you're an electrician in another state or a plumber in another state or whatever, there's really no means to get a licensure to engage in one of those skilled trades other than starting from scratch in North Carolina. But my recommendation would be that we just sort of sit tight on this. Like I say, as I read it, should not be construed to invalidate a reciprocity agreement we already have. I feel comfortable that our existing ELTP program with ABP is protected, and there would be some nibbles around the edges that Clint described we might have to deal with, but it's something that causes me a tremendous amount of heartburn. To me, the real risk of this is not necessarily the bill as it's stated, but what could emerge at the end. But no way to know that except monitor it. Unless Clint thinks there's something we need to get on record earlier, but.
All right, is there any further discussion? Mrs. Ashman? Right, if not, we'll hand it over to JP to discuss the financials.
morning, JP. Thanks, Ashley. Thanks, Jay. We'll start with the April financials, which I think you all have seen. Obviously, with the shutdown, operating expenses have taken a favorable variance. We just haven't been spending as much as we might. We were all about to roam freely right now. Revenues have come in greater than expected. There's still a couple of outstanding larger expenses that I think we're all pushing to get done in this fiscal year. But that said, we're obviously a very favorable variance at the end of April. I won't really delve too much into that unless there's any specific questions about April financials. Big picture is basically just, we're spending less money and we've had revenues come in higher than expected during this non-renewal portion of the year. So everything is good. That said, we are expecting to finish the year just as we have historically, better than projected or budgeted. Any questions on April financials from anybody? I'm always happy to delve way into the weeds with anybody. If there are no questions, I will roll right into the budget proposal for fiscal year 2020 to 2021. As we know, we've changed our fiscal year end to 6/30 to be on the state calendar. So our new fiscal year will begin July 1 and roll until June 30th.
Real quick, JP, I'm sorry, Troy, I just wanted to make sure we thank Robert and Andy and Keith for their good work in reviewing the budget proposal and going over it line by line with staff here. So this, just want to make sure all board members knew that this budget proposal that JP is going to describe was unanimously recommended by the Budget Finance Committee. Thank you all again for your great work.
Indeed, yeah. Thanks, Robert, Keith, Andy. As Jay mentioned, we did have our Finance Committee meeting at the end of, or actually, I guess it was at the beginning of this month, right? May 6th. So I think you all have copies of the proposed budget. I won't go into too much detail unless, again, there are questions, but the big picture was we are conservatively forecasting a 2% decrease in revenues. And we are also, we trimmed our operating expenses, budgeted for 2% less, and that combined will put us 6% lower budget than the previous year. Looking at dollar amounts, it's almost a break-even budget that we're proposing with last year. And by that, I just mean that we're proposing a net income of around 160K. I think it's just under that 153K, which last year I think was 160K. So pretty much the same budget that we proposed last year with just a slight decrease in revenues and operating expenses. That said, as we voiced to the Finance Committee, and I think they're in agreement, it is a conservative approach. Some might say that it's not conservative enough given the volatility of the markets. We are a bit insulated from all this volatility, obviously, given the nature of our revenues. And as Jay pointed out, during the 2008 recession, we actually didn't experience too much of a downturn in revenues. Professionals and the likes tend to hold on to their accreditations during these times. So we did budget for lower revenues, but I will not be surprised if our revenues come very close to the revenues we've experienced this year. In terms of our long-term investments, the board follows the very conservative state policy. We are only invested in stable value funds, bonds, which means we may get a lower return out of all this. As you guys all have seen, the markets are taking pretty big hits, and that said, our returns on our investments might not be as high as we would like, but we shouldn't lose any money either since we don't invest in equities or securities. Are there any questions? Sorry, I'm kind of rambling here. So, But yeah, if there are no questions, go ahead.
Yeah, this is Paul. I was just, there were a couple items that I just always sort of the big percent changes. And the device, DFD, reinstatement, that was quite a swing there.
Wallace, it's Jay. Yeah, it's a big percentage, but in terms of a gross amount, you'll see it's about 50. The reinstatements, Wallace, historically, as you know, they're a hard item to budget, right? Because it's just, you're trying to game basically how many people who want to renew a permit, forgot to do it, and then have to reinstate. And so it's hard to figure out trends on that. We just, we saw that even this past year, Wallace, there were fewer DPs that forgot to renew. So we were under budget on that particular line this year. We're just anticipating that will be the case this year, which is a good thing that folks aren't forgetting to renew. But there's not any great science behind that, I can tell you, Wallace.
Yeah, I understand that. And like I said, I do recognize that. What is this expenditures line 32? I guess salary. Just what was that? The salary.
Salaries other is just what we call our sort of our bonus pool that the board graciously extends every year. It just differs from the longevity right above that, which is a holdover from when the board were actual state employees. But the salaries other is specifically the pool of money that the board proposes every year as bonus incentives to be dispersed. Okay. And I think, as you can see there, we definitely conservatively drew that way back. And going back to the device DME, I did want to just go off of what Jay was mentioning. I did look at financials through the end of April when presenting the final proposal to the finance committee. And the device DME, obviously not a big dollar item in terms of revenues, but we did notice just we weren't seeing the actuals this year that we had proposed. And so we conservatively just budgeted way under that even. As Jay mentioned, it's hard to predict. But again, with revenues, conservatively saying we're going to be way under what we may actually do is much better in practice than expecting some great return on some things. Are there any other line items that anybody wants to? And I'm also happy to send details after the meeting, should any board members want specifics on what we looked at and how we came up with numbers. Okay, if there aren't any more questions, or if you come up with questions afterwards, please feel free to reach out to me, Jay, or Rhonda. Like I said, I'm always happy to dig into numbers with people, and I usually try to not bore everybody to tears with these. So that said, the proposal, like I said, is almost identical to last year. It looks like it's about $10K less than last year, and again, a positive net income is what we're projecting. And I think we've conservatively budgeted for this downturn in the economy as well as any other things we may see.
Members, it's Jay. One of the things that we did talk about is also is that we, as we're trying to budget and income specifically, we're very conservative on that. As we continue to monitor that, and we may want to reconvene the Budget and Finance Committee, which will be Dr. Duggins, Dr. Bowman, and Mr. Graves, maybe January or so of this year, just to take another look
at where we are, and see if we need to make any adjustments, positive or negative, depending on how the actuals play out over the next few months.
There's any further questions? So JP, thank you as always. You do an amazing job. And I think we'll hand it over to Josh or Crystal for investigative.
Actually, ask them, would want to entertain a motion to approve the fiscal year 2021 budget.
My bad.
Robert, I'd like to make a motion we approve as presented.
Check some seconds. Madam President, if you like, I'd be happy to call the roll.
That would be great.
Very good. We have a motion from Mr. Gray, seconded by Mr. Benson, to approve the proposed fiscal year 2020-2021 budget as presented. And with no further discussion, I'll call the roll. Ashley. Bill. Keith. Andy. Ahoy. Robert.
Aye.
And Wallace.
Aye.
Again, thank you to the members of the Budget Committee for the great insights throughout the process, and to JP and Rhonda who pull that laboring order every year on doing that, and to all of the department heads who spend an awful lot of time and are extremely conscientious about what they are requesting and justifying those requests. That's what has enabled us for now, I guess, Wallace, we're going on what, 16 years since the board last had a fee increase. That's not bad. Not bad.
That's one thing to look back on, I guess, during that period of time. It had nothing to do with me, that's to spread along the ride. But buying that building was key, I think.
Yeah, and there are so many things that stuck that have allowed us to have extremely predictable and manageable expenditures every year. So thanks to you all for making that move back then. With that then, Dr. Duggins, yeah, we're certainly moving along to the investigative statistics report. What we've got.
You hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Josh. Go ahead, brother.
Okay, all right. After board members, so what's behind the tab for the staff to May 21st? You'll see that we've acquired 126 investigations at the beginning of the year. You'll see broken down here in the pie chart. Civil legal, we got 38 of those cases. We've got a three-way side with section follow-ups, errors, AOC charges, with 22 cases each. Diversions are at 14, and then the reports are holding 3, and 12 substance abuse for 3, and then we have some cases that were just capitalized regarding the total surrender, 21st. We do have a good amount of technicians, 14, 3 pharmacists, 1 nurse practitioner this year, and just 1 DME. Any questions on the staff? All right, hearing none. I will say that our entire field staff has been doing a fantastic job in dealing with the times we are in now. I know that several of the field staff have assisted Crystal, Helen, in some projects that they've really jumped on and just done really well with. know all of our folks are very eager and anxious to get out of their respective homes and, get back on the road, so to speak, for inspections and, working their cases and just kind of doing the great job that they always do. Crystal or Ellen, if you have anything to add, floor is yours. I don't have anything further unless any of the board members have any questions.
Josh, this is Ashley. I just have a question about, do you guys have an expected rollout when you'll be doing inspections again, and how's that gonna work?
We don't have really a set date. We're kind of playing things by ear on the way the phases are going, from the governor, and I guess, just to see, what the collective decision will be, I guess, between, myself, Crystal, Ellen, and Jay. We certainly don't want to push them out there too quickly, and, so we're just kind of playing that by ear for right now. I'm hoping not too much longer, but, we'll just kind of have to see on that.
Ashley, it's Jay. I think probably our next decision point on that's going to be June 26th. That's sort of the next decision time frame on phase reopening. And so we'll take a look and we're going, and Wallace, I just so I think you're probably on the calls already when we discussed these, but we suspended inspections back in March, right about the same time. We curtailed them early and then suspended them after the stay-in-place order came down. And of course, one of the reasons we did that was we didn't want to put the entire field staff in unnecessary jeopardy or have them inadvertently place anyone in unnecessary jeopardy. And part of it too was, with pharmacies that were doing hard and good, but very tough work trying to adapt to the pandemic world, to not sort of be perceived as coming in and making their lives more difficult than they needed to be under that. I know that executive branch, most of the true executive branch agencies that do inspections had similarly suspended those and continue to be suspended. So again, I think June 26th is probably our next decision point on that.
Thank you very much for that answer. This is Ashley. All right, are there any further questions for Josh? All right, thank you, sir.
All right, I appreciate it.
All right, Jay, it looks like we're moving to the next agenda item, board member retreat planning.
Yeah, we're in sort of an almost intolerable go-no-go position with the retreat. As you all know, the plan is to have the retreat Monday, July 20th, and Tuesday, July 21st, and those would be in place of the regular July meeting. We do have space reserved until again here in Chapel Hill for it. We have a deposit. Leslie tells me that they are entirely amenable if we need to move the date because of the pandemic stuff to a different date. They're more than happy to work with us on that. Some of the main reasons we were targeting July as a relatively early retreat was we knew we were going to have at least one board member and potentially as many as 3 new board members. And so getting a retreat a little earlier, the new board members made a lot of sense. We also were planning to have in-person ethics refresher training to get everybody on exactly the same calendar. That's not going to happen whether we have our retreat in July or not. So, since Wallace is obviously an experienced board member, and Ashley and Robert are members, and I know Robert himself finds himself in a little bit of a no man's land here too about whether he's going to
continue to be on the board for how long. But some of the particularly, I guess, pressing is the right word, some of the membership reasons why we're pushing early aren't quite as pressing. So I guess what I'm interested from you guys, or whether in light of us needing to make some decisions about whether to do this, probably in advance of whether we have the right amount of information to do that. What's y'all's appetite for maybe considering moving the retreat back to when we usually have them in the September or October timeframe? Or do we want to stick with July, realizing that if we do a July retreat, it's probably going to have to be some sort of a virtual retreat, and I just don't know if that's the best format in which to do some of the things that we want to do. But we need your guidance, staff needs your guidance on that.
Jay, this is Ashley. If I remember correctly, we did a lot of this for the whole ethics, around the ethics training. So, I mean, personally, I'm good with moving it. I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but obviously we're going to be doing our own training online on that. So I'm in favor of moving it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'm not in favor of trying to do a virtual retreat.
This is why I agree too. I think it needs to be face to face if at all possible, and this should be moved to later.
This is Andy. I don't disagree. I think virtual for retreat would be near about possible. I would be interested if we are gonna not do July, we would then have a board meeting that month. Is it possible that we can have a face-to-face board meeting in July?
Yeah, that possibly, Andy. I mean, again, it depends on sort of where we are by then. But fortunately for that, we're not dealing with deposits and reservations already. We can make that decision after June 26th, based on the phase reopening stuff. So we're good to make that decision, but obviously with the retreat, we really can't wait that late to make a decision, or we're gonna lose our money over at the Carolina Inn for it.
This is Robert. I would support the moving to September as well.
Keith, how are you with that?
I'm good with that.
Let me ask this then. What I would like to see what your thoughts are about this. My ask would be, Leslie will go back and have a discussion with the Carolina Inn about this. I would say go ahead and assess the availability of the Carolina Inn on the dates of both September 14th and 15th, which will be the normal September meeting schedule, as well as October 19th and 20th, just to have 2 dates in play. Let her work with the Carolina Inn about this. And would you all be comfortable with delegating to Ashley as the president to be the person with whom we can liaise to lock this down in case we have to move pretty quickly? Would that be okay?
I would be. Still. This is Andy. Not to throw a monkey wrench in it, but I don't know what people might be going to and what might be canceled. But NCPA, National Community Pharmacists Association annual meeting is the 16th through the 20th of October. I don't know if they'll cancel that or if folks are thinking about going to that.
That's good to know, Andy. On my radar, this deal. Which that's obviously gonna, I mean, that's something to keep in mind for the regular meeting as well. But, yeah, I mean, look, we can focus on the September date.
Yeah, I'm just throwing it out there for information.
No, it's good to know, Andy.
Something. And those pieces, that might be something I'm interested in going to, depending on the situation comes in.
I'm putting it in my calendar right now to, sort of block it.
It is in Nashville, by the way.
That's the home of one of the finest law schools in the country.
Nashville City Community College.
Any of you that go there, right? They go by the Vanderbilt Law School and find my portrait in there and get a good look see at that. If you find it, be sure to take a picture and report it back.
Well, even the best law school in the country makes a mistake every once in a while.
Hey, listen, I'd rather be lucky than good any day. Well, I'm not hearing any objection there, so Leslie will reach out to the Carolina Inn. We'll look to shoot for the September dates, and if they're available, and we will just keep in touch with you, Ashley, about it. And of course, we may set September, and God knows what the world's going to look like in September, but I think we can have a higher level of confidence by then.
Yeah, and I'll make sure I communicate with the rest of the board members to make sure that that's still good with everybody when those decisions are made.
Yeah, but if everybody would just sort of put the 14th and 15th down on your calendars. Again, those were regular pre-hearing comments and board meeting anyway. Hopefully that'll work out. We'll keep you posted on all that, of course.
All right, so it looks like we're moving to the NABP annual meeting recap. By the way, Jay did an amazing job with his little presidential gavel, and it went super smooth. I think myself and Keith and Bill were all on that meeting via Zoom, and so it really was very well done. Everything went so smoothly, so I commend you for that, Jay.
Ashley, thank you. I can take no real credit for that. NABP staff, of course, did a phenomenal job of transitioning in a very short period of time to a format that worked and technologically was very smooth, and I'm grateful. What I most wanted to say about the NABP annual meeting was to reiterate something that I was able to say during that meeting, but I want you to hear is how incredibly grateful I am to each of you as current board members and all the past board members who have not only tolerated the amount of time that I've spent with NABP stuff, but have encouraged me from day one. Thank you for that. It was more than a bit anticlimactic to end the presidential year that way, but I also feel like that NABP accomplished some really important things that turned out to be more timely than we could have anticipated this year. So I'm looking forward to an additional year of chair. My primary role, as I see it this year as chair, is to be as supportive as I can of Al. That in a sort of back-end complimented way, but to fully support and help with Al Carter as he tries to fill a set of shoes that are unimaginably large with replacing Karma. And so I'm looking forward to being able to do that for Al over the next year. And then come 2021, hopefully we'll have an in-person NABP meeting in Phoenix, and we can all gather and celebrate the way that I wish we could have celebrated this year. But most of all, again, thank you to each of you all for being so supportive of my time in the NABP Executive Committee. I also, Ashley, by the way, they sent me a very nice crystal gavel now. It's super heavy, and so I've been around the house with that crystal gavel. Anybody that says anything I don't like, I say objection overruled, and don't make me use this gavel.
That's all.
We just
just on break. I assure you, you all know Amy pretty well. You can imagine that my overruling objections will be about as effective as you think it would be. Hello, we should tell her don't break. I think that's fair advice.
Hello, this is Robert. I just wanted to congratulate Jay on a good, great year and commend him for the job and honor of serving the ABP president, and also certainly fared well for us as well to show a lot of good for North Carolina to have you served, and commend you on the job well done. And I know disappointing in some ways that you couldn't have your XRA at the end, but it was all right. We'll move on. So congratulations and good job.
Robert, thank you, and thank you certainly for your support and Donna's support as well at all those meetings, and for your consistently being a member of ABP's task forces and committees. Really appreciate that.
Okay, it looks like we can move on to the reports to the board.
One quick thing, Ashley, if I may. The District 3, NABP District 3 meeting has been moved to a virtual meeting. It's going to look very similar in operation to the NABP annual meeting, and there will be an online that just cover the key decisions that District 3 needs to make and the key reports it has to hear. Cindy Piram, of course, doing her usual great work planning through this. South Carolina was to be the host of this year's meeting down at Hilton Head. The facility down at Hilton Head has graciously agreed to let us just rebook there next year in 2021, and South Carolina will host. And so we, the North Carolina Board of Council, acting as the de facto host of this year's meeting online, which will be very brief, but there'll be much more information to come on that in the coming weeks. But we just, we were in a position where we realized that if we had a live meeting, we were likely to have a grand total of about 20 participants. And that's just not going to work for a district meeting. So keep you posted on that.
Thank you, Jay. I'm sorry I skipped over that item.
Not at all.
All right, so do we have any reports to the board from the School of Pharmacy?
That indicated to me prior to today, Ashley, that they were going to be on the meeting.
Okay.
This is Andy. I won't take but just a second, just a status thing from a school pharmacy perspective. I've said this to you guys multiple times, but just know that from an application form perspective that we are seeing another decline this year. You know, when people talk about whether we've hit the bottom or not, it's down again this year for us, and it's down again, I think, for most folks out there. I think, you know, this is just, you know, guessing. I don't have any, obviously, inside information about other schools, but I think we're getting very close to the possibility of programs having to consider whether they're going to continue to operate. That would not be the case, I don't believe, for any of the schools in North Carolina, but I can only speak for myself and for, you know, a bellwether like Carolina that's minimally impacted by this kind of thing. So just know it's tough out there. I think that COVID, you know, some talking heads think that COVID might help resurge a little bit from a job market perspective for pharmacy, and I think that might be true. But it is tough out there. And if I was in Las Vegas, I would put money on you seeing some pharmacy schools cease to operate in the coming year or so.
Andy, it's Jay. I can tell you that I have word that a pharmacy school in the Southeast, not a North Carolina school, is shuttering one of its satellite
campus programs. So there could be more of that, to be sure.
Yeah, I think it would start with that, and then if there are programs, and I don't want to throw numbers out there and name names because I don't think that's fair, but from internal discussions with external partners and relationships with those schools, there are some schools out there that maybe haven't been around as long as some others that are struggling mightily with enrollment. And so just wanted folks to kind of be aware of that so you have an idea of what the status of things is out there.
All righty, thank you, Andy, for that update. It's a little disheartening, I know, for everybody. And Jay?
President Ashley, Madam President,
Yes.
Bill Nixon, pharmacist from the western part of the state. Can I bring up a new business item?
Of course.
Thank you. This is for Jay and Antoine. Is there, are you guys working on a way we can do PHCs during this emergency COVID thing via video chat? Is that something we can use?
Yeah, Bill is
meeting for?
Yeah, Bill is Jay. We can certainly go to that if we need to. Fortunately, we haven't had a heavy PHC docket. This does give me an opportunity to thank Andy. We do have one consent order on the consent agenda for today, and Andy, I really appreciate your flexibility in working with me on moving that through in a way. But yes, Bill, we could do that in the main. We have been trying to, unless there's a really urgent need to have a pre-hearing conference, as there was in this particular case. We've been able to push those down, but we have technology we can use right now to have virtual pre-hearing conferences if we need to.
Well, audio only gets the job done, but for a real PHC, I think eyeball to eyeball is much, much better. If it's possible.
I agree with you 100%. And that's part of the reason that at PHC, if we haven't had an urgent matter, we've been pushing them down the road so that they can be in person. Because for my part, I agree with you, Bill. I think assessing the demeanor of folks who are in there, that sort of thing is very, very important. But if we get to a point where we feel like that there are some pre-hearing conferences we just absolutely need to have, we certainly will make sure that that's done with a video component and not simply an audio component.
And Bill and Clint, after your good comments 2 or 3 months ago about the need not to indefinitely postpone PHCs, we did go back and look at the PHC pending list, and there are very few on there, but there was at least one that was a sort of standard error case where we said if this goes to PHC, it's just going to be a letter of warning anyway, and we went ahead and sent that and took it off the docket. So we will continue to treat them all individually the best way we think we can treat them.
Okay. Thank you for that comment, says Bill Nixon.
All right. Is there any further discussion or any other issues to discuss?
Madam President, I think the only thing left is the consent agenda. And we do have we do need a closed session for potential summary suspensions.
Okay, and I'm gonna need a little help at doing this consent agenda because I can't remember what Keith normally does. Sorry.
I think we just add that, see, there is one consent order on the consent agenda. It was added late to your agenda, but this was a time-sensitive pre-hearing conference because the result of this consent order is also driving the opening of a community health center pharmacy. So again, I'm extremely grateful to Dr. Boban, who was absolutely invested in this and on the spot and helped us go through the procedure on that. But that one consent order is there, and certainly you could entertain, if it were the will of the board, Ashley, a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Okay. Has everybody had a chance to review that item?
Yes.
If so, do we have a motion to approve? Okay. Give everybody a moment to do that.
Well, also reviewed it, since Andy recommended this, Andy should not move, second, or vote, so any tyrant noises he makes will be construed as an abstention. Arg.
Okay, so is it appropriate to ask if there's any more to this story than what's written out here?
There really isn't anything to add to that. Bill, the facts are fully, as found and agreed upon, are fully reflected of what happened there. The key is there's also a pharmacy permit application pending for a Bertie County Rural Community Health Center pharmacy. This pharmacist would be the pharmacist manager of that pharmacy. And if this consent order were approved based on the services that pharmacy is going to provide, we would be able to issue that pharmacy permit.
So is there a motion?
There's not an issue of, I'm sorry, this bill. So there's not an issue of substance abuse, it's just a management paperwork?
That's correct. Bill, that's correct. There was no allegation in this case of substance use disorder, or diversion by a pharmacist to feed a substance use disorder.
Thank you.
Mr.
Roberts, so they were being proactive once they realized the mistake.
I'm not sure how to answer that, Robert. I'm not trying to sandbag you on that. I just have to go back to the facts as recited in that there, as the pharmacist is acknowledging that he failed in certain respects to comply with some record keeping and oversight obligations with respect to controlled substances, and did that in 3 cases.
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't clarify that. The company was being proactive once they found that.
Yes, it's recited in there in the one case where there's a missing controlled substances. Yes, the overall corporation, once it identified the issue, it immediately brought that to the attention of the board.
Thank you. Yeah. Wasn't clear on that, sorry.
No. I'm happy to clarify on that.
This is Bill again. So Jay, I'm sorry, did you say that the loss of the oxycodone was ultimately discovered to be because of another pharmacist?
No, the fact was cited in there, the how those went missing was never determined.
Okay. It still hasn't been, I guess.
Correct.
All right, thank you. Sorry.
Yep.
Any further discussion? Is there a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Hey Jay, do you want to do the roll call?
gonna do my thing here, Ashley. All right, a motion from Mr. Mixon, seconded by Dr. Vance to approve the consent agenda as presented. With there being no further discussion, I'll call the voting roll. Ashley.
Aye.
Keith. Aye. Bill. I approve it. Robert. Aye. Wallace. Aye. And Dr. Bowman is recused from that vote. Arg. Ahoy, hoy.
Hey, I'm down here at Tag Fest, so I'm just down here with Blackbeard and all his history. I can't help it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I totally understand. Ashley, can I ask very quickly, and we can get it on the record, that consent agenda, that consent order needs to be signed by the president. Would you authorize me to sign on your behalf?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. That concludes the open session agenda. We do need to go into a closed session for potential summary suspensions.
All right, so we have.
Second. There is a motion and a second. I guess I need to call the roll again, Ashley.
Okay. What additional question, I forget what we do. Do we stay on the line or do we get off and come back on the line?
You all stay on the line. And Antoine will disconnect the public line.
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, motion has been made and seconded to move into closed session to consider possible summary suspensions. Ashley.
Aye.
Bill. Aye. Keith. Aye. Andy. Boyd. Robert. Aye. And Wallace. Aye. Hey, Madam President, we're in closed session. Let's just give it a minute here, and I'll wait till Antoine gives me the all clear signal.
All clear.